20 years ago, podcasts are going back in the time machine to September of 1995 for Volume 2 of this month's show. Volume 1 is a bumper look at all things WCW, including the first ever Monday Nitro and Full Brawl. Volume 3 is ECW, and Volume 4 isn't even about wrestling, as we take in UFC 7, a bit of mixed martial arts, the Brawl in Buffalo. We're here for Volume 2, looking at WWF, including In Your House 3. I'm being joined by Kieran Mitchell. Kieran, hello.
Hi Bob, how are you?
I'm good, mate. And Craig Wilson.
Greetings.
Craig, kick us off with the news.
WWF pulled a bait and switch on their pay-per-view audience this month, selling a main event that guaranteed a title switch before undoing the change 24 hours later on Monday Night Raw. Shawn Michaels and Diesel defeated Yokozuna and the British Bulldog, standing in for Owen Hart in the main event of In Your House 3 that featured all titles on the line, but the finish involved Diesel pinning Owen Hart, who was removed from the match, having apparently missed the show. On the next night on Raw, these titles were returned to Yoko and Owen. That, however, was all in vain, as the Smoking Guns defeated Owen and Yoko on Raw to win the tag belts back.
The biggest matchup of the month, however, was between Raw and the newly launched WCW Monday Nitro. Raw responded to the new show with a new entrance video shot on top of Titan Towers, and that featured a higher volume of name matchups, with the 11th of September show headlined by Shawn Michaels versus Sid. After going unopposed against the debut Nitro, the first head-to-head ratings battle was won by WCW, with Nitro drawing a 2.5 rating against Raw's 2.2. The main event on that second Nitro show was Hulk Hogan against, yes, Lex Luger.
Despite working a WWF house show 24 hours prior to the show, Lex Luger literally walked out on the debut edition of WCW Monday Nitro, ending the show with a confrontation against Hulk Hogan. Stories conflict, but Luger appears to have been working with the WWF on a verbal agreement after his contract had expired. Vince McMahon had even let Luger hold talks with WCW, but those apparently fell through, resulting in Luger being placed in some more important positions on the card at SummerSlam and afterwards. Things with WCW, however, changed after Vader had got into a fight with Paul Orndorff at WCW TV taping. At the time of recording, Vader remained suspended, and Luger was drafted in to fill the main position of Nitro, as well as with the Fall Brawl match against Dungeon of Doom.
Vince McMahon formally announced to talent that Bill Watts would be taken over from Pat Patterson as the go-between for management and talent on booking issues. Watts will be taking over many of McMahon's duties when it came to creative aspects of television and pay-per-views. McMahon, it is said, will work with Watts on these, but won't overrule him. In other news, King Mabel got into very hot water after the SummerSlam main event after injuring Diesel's back with the sit-down splash. The injury left Diesel out of action for a few weeks afterwards.
There were some serious problems at a live event in Montreal, with Jean-Pierre Lafitte refusing to lose clean to WWF champion Diesel in the main event in his hometown. The show drew nearly 6,000 people, which was actually seen to be a disappointment given how hot the area had been for the company previously. After refusing to job to Diesel, Vince McMahon had to be called at home and agreed to let the match end in a double countout. While it's said that Diesel was mad about this, it's believed that Shawn Michaels was making the situation even worse by riling him up.
WWF hosted In Your House 3, which saw Diesel and Shawn for the evening at least win the tag team titles. Elsewhere, Bret Hart pinned Jean-Pierre Lafitte and Dean Douglas defeated Razor Ramon following interference from the 1-2-3 Kid. There were also wins for Savio Vega, Sid and the British Bulldog. The storyline throughout the show was Jim Cornette attempting to find a replacement for Owen Hart in the main event.
Welcome back, everybody. And now McMahon has gone up into the ring with those two losers, so we got three losers in the ring.
A couple of weeks ago, took unbelievable sums out of you. The match with Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog.
A moment ago, used him as a fire hydrant.
Douglas, a thorn in your side. The man whom you will face at In Your House. And of course,
Dean
Douglas, no stranger to you either. 1-2-3 Kid in the matchup recently last weekend on Superstars.
Please don't compare the intellect of Dean Douglas to that of 1-2-3 Kid, whose IQ is the same as his shoe size.
Making reference to the intellect of Dean Douglas.
He's brilliant. What about
him? I don't know whether here tonight, whether or not he proved his intellect or not, but he came down here, interfered in the matchup.
Come on, McMahon, go ahead and say it. You got to say the Kid cost Razor the match.
Watched your back, and from there, Dean Douglas leaves. You come off the top.
Yeah,
the
here we go.
referee gets up and sees you, and he disqualifies Razor. Razor loses the match.
Right, because of the Kid.
Of your interference.
Good.
Obviously, Dean Douglas unquestionably would feel at this moment he has a superior intellect.
He is superior.
Hold on a second, Vince.
I cost him the match.
Right.
What about last week when he came down and cost me the match? Huh, Razor? What about that?
Uh-oh, wait a minute. This is getting good. Yeah,
I'm not
Razor.
saying this was intentional. I'm simply talking about the intellect of one Dean Douglas. The fact of the matter is...
No, let's get back to the
Forget
other
about
match. Come
Dean
on.
Douglas. I didn't cost him the match, Vince. Razor, I didn't cost you the match. Last week you cost me the match. You know something? You always treat me like a little kid, Razor. You know, you're one of my best friends.
Well, look like he's going to throw a temper tantrum.
Kid. You don't give me any respect. Nobody took me seriously when I beat you the first time.
Hey, wait a minute. That's right. He did beat him. That's
Do
right.
I gotta beat you again?
Yeah, go ahead, kid.
Next week I'll beat you again, Razor.
Yeah, what about that, greaseball?
What about it? Next week.
This is great.
Now, wait a minute.
No, he did,
McMahon.
McMahon.
Getting a little too carried away here. I mean, all because perhaps of Dean Douglas. Are you challenging Razor Ramon to a match next week? He's watched your back.
Yeah.
Exactly right,
This is
Vince. Razor Ramon.
He's afraid of you, kid.
If it's gonna take for me to beat you one more time, for you to give me
Look
some
at Ramon, he's
respect
sweating already.
and not treat me like a little kid anymore, the next week, Razor, as much as a good friend as you are to me, I will beat you next week.
Wow. Listen to this. What about it, Razor? Huh? You scared of the kid? I love it.
Razor,
Kid.
how do you react to now this?
You know, McMahon, anything can happen in the WWF.
Yeah, and you get beat by the kid again.
I make history at SummerSlam with a ladder match that they will talk about forever.
Yeah, and you proved tonight you'll never be the same.
The British Bulldog out here making a lot of waves.
Yeah, making you a loser. You lost to
Dean
him.
Douglas, some bookworm, wants to take the bad guy to school.
That's right, because you need it. You're so stupid.
And on top of all that, my little buddy, the 1, 2, 3 kid who I made famous,
Yeah, by a loss to him.
wants a piece of Razor Ramon one more time.
I can't blame him. You're on the world's
Well,
biggest losing streak.
Chico, if you want it,
Huh?
if they want it,
Huh? Huh? Say it. Oh, boy.
if you want it,
Who cares what he wants?
then you got it.
WWF's counterpunch to WCW Monday Nitro began on Monday Night Raw on the 11th of September with a new entrance video filmed on top of Titan Tower featuring wrestlers in a ring and some fans. The show began with Razor Ramon against the British Bulldog. The freshly turned Bulldog has cut his hair very short. After a ref bump, Razor hit the Razor's edge on Bulldog. Razor goes for the cover. Dean Douglas runs out and drops a knee on Razor before running off the Kid. Douglas scarpers. Bulldog power slams Razor, covers him. The Kid hits a splash from the top, but Bulldog moves and Kid hits Razor and the referee calls for the DQ. After the match, Vince interviews the Kid and Razor. Vince implied that Kid cost Razor the match, which angers the Kid. He says that Razor cost him a match on Superstars the week before. Kid challenges Razor to a match on the following week, saying that he feels that he has to beat Razor again to gain his respect. We get squash victories for the Smoking Guns and Isaac Yankem DDS. In the main event, after a surprisingly decent match, Shawn Michaels defeated Psycho Sid with a trio of super kicks to retain his Intercontinental title. Michaels then teases stripping off. After the break, Doc Hendricks catches up with them both. We open up the September 18th edition of Raw with Razor against 1, 2, 3 Kid. The match, which not surprisingly is very good, nears its conclusion with a ref bump. Dean Douglas runs out on the distraction and hits a nice top rope splash onto Razor. Despite a very long time before the Kid made the pin, Razor was spark out and unable to kick out. Douglas performed his report card segment. He labelled the Kid D for dumb because he thought he beat the Razor unaided. He awards Razor an E and himself an A. He then gives Razor an N also, calling it a no-brainer that he will beat Razor in your house. And what does DEAN stand for? I did pop for that. Bret Hart phones in during a Jean-Pierre Lafitte squash match. Bret calls him a thief, saying he's stolen things from him as well as people in the locker room. Owen Hart and Yokozuna defeat King Mabel and Sir Mo in the main event of Raw.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the WWF Tag Team titles will be up for grabs, the first ever WWF triple header this Sunday. But these aren't the only titles, Jim Cornette, up for grabs, and you got a smile on your face. Oh, yeah, because this is history in the making this Sunday on pay-per-view nationwide. All the World Wrestling Federation titles on the line at the same time for the first time ever. Now, sure, if Yokozuna and Owen Hart get beat, then they lose the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team title. We understand that. But I hope by now the people understand that the same... Excuse me. We're talking the WWF champion.
Oh, butt in, McMahon.
Cool. We're talking Shawn Michaels. We're talking two dudes with attitudes against Yokozuna and Owen Hart. Wait a minute. I was fixed to get to that. It's not going to be two dudes with attitudes. After this Sunday, it's going to be two fellas that are yellow. Because the same goes for Diesel and Shawn Michaels. Wow. If one of them gets beat, then they lose their title. If one of them beats Shawn Michaels, then the man that pins him becomes the Intercontinental Champion. If one of them beats Diesel, the man that pins him becomes the World Wrestling Federation Champion.
Oh, yeah.
Now, he's a two-time World Wrestling Federation Champion, and he wants to three-peat. And if he gets the opportunity, that's exactly what he's going to do. This man's been the king of the ring. And if he gets a chance at either the Intercontinental or the World title, that's what he's going to take because he wants to prove that he's the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. And as for Diesel and Shawn Michaels, I want to ask you two punks a question. What happened the last time you were partners? Huh? What happened the last time? You broke up.
Right.
You had your fight like a couple of divorcees.
That's right.
Now, do you think, Diesel, if you've got a choice of saving your title or protecting your little buddy, which one are you going to pick? And Shawn Michaels, with your background, with your past, with your ego, if you got a chance to save that gold belt around your waist or save your big buddy Diesel, which one are you going to pick?
Choose the belt.
I want to know if you both can look yourselves in a mirror and say that you trust each other and say that you really think you're friends this time, because these men are a unit. It's maybe one thing to be great individual single wrestlers, but it's another talent entirely to be a great tag team.
Right.
So as good as they are individually, these men are a better team. They have that unique ability to work together like a well-oiled watch. And believe me, after this Sunday and in your house, they're not only going to be the tag team champions, but either the Intercontinental or the World Wrestling Federation title is going to be around one of their waists. And it's going to be legal because President McGilla Gorilla said it could be. In your house, in your face, and around their waist. All the gold, all the titles, and all the glory this Sunday night, brother.
And we move away from the TV into In Your House 3. Craig can kick us off with the results.
In the opening match, Savio Vega defeated Waylon Mercy in 7 minutes. Psycho Sid with Ted DiBiase in his corner then defeated Henry Godwin in a similar time. The British Bulldog then defeated Bam Bam Bigelow in 12 minutes. Dean Douglas with Bob Backlund in his corner then defeated Razor Ramon in just shy of 50 minutes. Bret Hart then bested Jean-Pierre Lafitte in the best part of 17 minutes, and in the main event, WWF Champion Diesel and Intercontinental Champion Shawn Michaels defeated Tag Team Champions Yokozuna and the British Bulldog, who was standing in for Owen Hart to win all of the titles.
All of the titles. Kieran, what do you think of the show?
There was one really standout match which we'll get to. But again, like with some of the other WWF stuff we've covered before, it's just sometimes the finishes just tend to sour the whole thing. And I think, again, in lieu of what they do on the Raw that comes after, I think the end it really did sour the whole thing. But overall, the matches weren't that great. Really, like I said, one standout match, but like I said, the ending just soured it for me a bit.
Craig?
I thought it was alright. It was alright if you compare it against 1995 WWF. It maybe doesn't stand up so well against some of the better shows in previous years, but I thought it was alright. I mean, I think Kieran's analysis is pretty spot on. Some of the finishes left a lot to be desired, but there was some good stuff, but it tends to be overshadowed by some of the poorer stuff.
Yeah, but we're in a position where, you know, they're pricing these shows at $15, and I think they're giving us about $15 worth of action, in the sense that, you know, there was one very good match on this show. The main event was decent in front of a decent crowd, before they kind of, you know, sullied it with just that ending, which, you know, stunk of a cop-out. I quite enjoyed Dean Douglas against Razor Ramon. I think that's the best Shane Douglas match I've seen since we started this project. Well, the kind of the three-way dance notwithstanding. And the undercard was fine. You know, again, this was a decently booked show with decently good matches, with one very good match. And yeah, well, I guess we'll take each match as it comes. We start off with Vince McMahon being joined by Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross on commentary. It turns out Jim Ross's comments last month were pertaining to him being dropped from the show, not by the company, when he said that, I guess they think I'm too southern. Well, obviously he ended up appearing on the show. And it's Savio Vega versus Waylon Mercy. They show clips of Vega's debut at the first In Your House, which just happens to be a clip of him beating up Jeff Jarrett and the Roadie. Savio Vega against Waylon Mercy. Waylon starts off by mocking Vega's dance, then shakes hands with him. Savio starts off working over Mercy's left arm. Ross points out that Mercy's a southpaw. The action spills to the outside and Mercy hits a body slam. We go to a picture-in-picture. Doc Hendricks says that Owen Hart isn't in the building. Mercy goes to lock in a sleeper. Savio struggles around the ring before driving Mercy's head into the turnbuckle. Mercy tries for a sleeper, but Vega this time hits a belly-to-back suplex. Vega hits a big boot. Mercy hits a brainbuster that Jim Ross calls by saying, "That's a brainbuster, Vince." Vega hits a pretty poor German suplex for a 2 count before hitting a spinning back kick for the 3 count. Vince McMahon calls it an upset. Craig?
It was alright. I quite like Savio Vega, and I really like the Waylon Mercy character. This was fine. It was a decent back and forth opening match. Yeah, no real complaints here. I don't think it's going to make any match of the year lists, but it wasn't rubbish either.
Kieran?
Yeah, I sort of guessed that maybe that Waylon Mercy might be carrying a slight injury, and I think, is he not sort of on his way out sort of thing at the minute?
Well, I was reading kind of in both the Torch and the Observer that the theory goes that his knees are shot. That basically, having put all this effort into creating this quite interesting character, played by a guy that I think does quite a good job of it. They put him in this position, and then the perception was that him losing was a sign that they'd given up on him, and I think they'd given up on him really because his body isn't in the best of shape. And of course, what do? Now that they've given up on him, they put him in the feud with The Undertaker. Of course they have. But that will happen after the pay-per-view. Carry on, Kieran.
Yeah, it was just, you could sort of tell he was carrying some sort of injury because, I mean, I don't think they'd give a guy who was maybe that slow to begin with that kind of in-depth character. So I really, really enjoyed the character of what I saw of it. He was kind of trying to come across as a face, but wrestle as a heel. It was like really interesting and like really different to everything else. It's just a shame that he's obviously carrying an injury because it kind of affected the match. Savio Vega was fine. I didn't think he was brilliant. I didn't think he was rubbish. I just think that Waylon Mercy obviously there was obviously something wrong. I don't know the specifics, like I said, but it was an okay match. It was just a shame that you couldn't get more out of it because there was obviously a lot more that Waylon Mercy could probably have done.
No, Mercy had quite a long opening squash match victory on Raw, I think, in August. That was bizarre in that, well, was it a squash match or was it a name guard? I can't remember. I would have referenced it in last month's TV report if it did. But that was quite a long match, in fact, quite a hot crowd. And I think, Kieran, go out and seek that match because that was another good sign of what Mercy can do. But as I say, I think, I don't think they're in a position where they massively want to be pushing Savio Vega. So I think the fact that Mercy lost this is probably a decent sign that, it isn't working out.
Yeah.
And Craig, as I say, we go back to where we've been before with The Undertaker. Mercy's needs a shot. Let's put him with The Undertaker. I don't get that.
Yeah, it does seem strange. Just talk about the Wheel of Mercy just a final bit. It really is a massive shame that, the guy portraying him is broken down by this point, because I mean it's a completely different sort of character to what we're used to. It's not someone that's got a job such as a ice hockey player or a country singer and is using the WWF to try and make it in his chosen career. It's just,
or a dentist.
Yeah, exactly. It's something so completely different, and it's just such a massive shame that.
Maybe that was the problem. Maybe his lack of actual occupation is the reason they're not pushing him.
Maybe he'd have better knees if he was doing something in his spare time, you're right.
Yeah. Whale of Mercy, the evil accountant, that kind of thing. Yeah. Maybe you get a gimmick with that. But the action was fine. It wasn't great. This is the match I'd necessarily go back and recommend, but I've seen far worse. And the one thing about Mercy is that his kind of in-ring psychology is of a decent enough level where he can add a couple of points to a match. I think he did that here. Anyway, we cut backstage and Doc Hendricks interrupts an argument between James E. Cornette and Gorilla Monsoon. Cornette claims that Owen Hart is in Michigan, just not in the building. Monsoon says that the match will take place regardless. Over on, it's Psycho Sid with Ted DiBiase versus Henry Godwin. We cut to a clip from Superstars with Sid laying waste to a bin backstage. Godwin knocks Sid to the outside. He then hits an apron suplex back in the ring. They're saying that Godwin has a back injury after being powerbombed on the Superstars. Sid turns to the outside and DiBiase gets a couple of kicks in. Sid locks in a modified camel clutch, then goes for a crossface but puts his fingers in Godwin's eyes instead. Godwin rallies with some rights and a shoulder tackle, then sets a reverse DDT, hitting it, but DiBiase pulls him off the pin. Somehow the referee doesn't see this. Godwin continues his attack, but bounces off the far rope and DiBiase trips him. Again, the referee is distracted. Sid hits a powerbomb and wins the match. After the match, Sid and DiBiase argue over who's going to slop Godwin with his pig slop. While they bicker, Bam Bam Bigelow runs out and attacks Sid. Cameron runs out to unbalance the numbers, but as Cameron and Sid restrain Bigelow and DiBiase lines up to slop Bigelow, Godwin comes around and dumps the slop all over DiBiase. Kieran?
Yeah, this is kind of where I made a sort of a comparison between like a really good big man or potentially like a Wayland and somebody that's just appears to be just wasting people's time with Sid. Because Sid has got, I said the last time I did a WWF show, or it was on a Raw or something, I think, and I just said he's got such a great look. He's got a great, the way he he comes down the aisle to the ring, his music, everything fits, and then he gets in the ring and good God, is it boring. There is just nothing in this match whatsoever that I could get into. I hated the end with all the slop. I don't even know what pig slop is, Bob, to be honest. Is it pig poo? Is it pig feed? What slop?
I think it's feed.
It is feed.
I called it pig shit in one of the TV reviews over this year, but I believe it's feed.
Oh, okay, I'll take your word for it, Bob.
It looks like vomit, but I don't think it's shit.
But I just Sid is such a waste, and this is where it's like annoying. You've got something really different, a really big man like Waylon Mercy, who's got this great character but just can't do the physical stuff, and you've got somebody like Sid. I mean, I actually don't know what the guy's capable of. He does that little. He never appears to be that bothered. I mean, is he sort of is he somebody else that's on his way out? Do we know what the situation is? Whatever it is, I just didn't like this match at all.
Great.
Can't help but think that Kieran's got some sort of bad history with Sid. It might not have been shit that was in the bucket, but it was shit that was in the ring. I just hated this match. On paper, I hated it, and I just can't get enthused by Sid at all, despite every promotion's various attempts to try and get us enthused about him. Henry Godwin seems like a decent, capable enough worker, but I mean, I don't think anyone could drag a stellar match out of Psycho Sid, and Henry Godwin certainly failed on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where Godwin was a heel he came in as a heel, They aligned him with Ted DiBiase because they aligned everyone with Ted DiBiase. They had the angle on Raw. Was it the 11th of September show, Kieran? Was that the pig slop angle?
I think so, yeah.
I just can't think. I don't think it was in August. But yeah, they have the angle on the program where Godwin turns face by, dumping the pig slop over Ted DiBiase.
Yeah,
the crowd pop for that, but they're gonna pop for that. But it doesn't change the fact that Godwin's not over. You've got Sid, a guy, there's not much to the program either. There's a couple of matches on this card, for all the positives of Brett against Jean-Pierre Lafitte. The feud was Lafitte stole his jacket. That was all they were feuding about. And that carried the match. There just wasn't enough on this match or going into this match that gave you a reason to care. And as Craig said, they kind of stunk up the joint. It wasn't the worst match I've ever seen, but it was just nothing to it. And the post-match angle was, it was what it was. But as I say, just nothing really more to discuss, for all of Ted DiBiase's strengths, they just keep putting in with losers. I know Sid won this match, but it's like they just put him with guys that just don't go anywhere.
Yeah, it's like, this guy isn't doing something, let's stick him in the $1 million corporation. And then they think that's enough, and it's not. So a guy just goes from not doing anything to not doing anything while being a member of the $1 million corporation.
Yeah, indeed. Anyway,
there was a really great line from Jerry Lawler in this one. I don't know if he's picked it up, but right at the start he said to Jim Ross, "You know what Arkansas state motto is? At least we're not Oklahoma," which I thought was quite fun. Probably the highlight of the match.
Yeah, probably right. We're backstage again, and Monsoon and Cornette are still arguing. Monsoon's position is unchanged, but he says that if Owen doesn't turn up, Yokozuna can either defend the titles by himself or find another partner. We move on, and it's the newly turned British Bulldog with a much neater, more cropped haircut against Bam Bam Bigelow. We cut to a picture-in-picture. Jim Cornette is negotiating with Sid about subbing in for Owen. Back in the ring, Bam Bam hits a hit toss, but misses a standing elbow. Bulldog settles on a chokehold, but Bam Bam flips out of it. Bam Bam charges at Bulldog and then goes for a clothesline, but Bulldog ducks and pulls the top rope down, sending Bam Bam tumbling hard to the outside. Davey Boy goes for an apron suplex, but Bam Bam blocks and picks Davey into a suplex for crotching him on the top rope. Bulldog takes out Bam Bam by the back of the knee, then starts working over his leg. Bam Bam withstands the onslaught and buys time and then ends a guri. Bulldog then locks in a single leg Boston Crab, then a sleeper. Bam Bam finally escapes, then rallies with some punches. Davey Boy goes for a body slam but buckles under the weight. Bulldog goes for a sunset flip, but Bam Bam sits on Davey's chest. Bam Bam goes for a moonsault, but Davey moves out of the way. Bulldog goes for the cover but only gets a 2 count. Bulldog drops a headbutt from the top but only gets himself a 2. Bulldog fires Bam Bam off the far turnbuckle, then hits a body slam for the clean victory. Craig?
Not bad for a big man match. Sort of feel sorry for Bam Bam's sort of directionless. We'll probably come back to that at a later date. But yeah, no, this was fine. I don't think it sort of differed at all from your expectations going into this one, but two big imposing guys, decent enough match. Yeah, it was fine.
Kieran?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a Bam Bam mark, so I was hoping for a bit more, but I get the sense, as with Waylon, as with Sid, is Bam Bam another guy that's going to be, is he in like transition? Because, I believe that they even gets his headbutt is kicked out of in that match. But it's just okay. There's nothing like really grabbing me for like a pay-per-view. I was expecting, Bulldog against Bigelow. All right, if Bigelow is in sort of transition, maybe again somebody else is on the way out. I was just expecting a lot more out of it, and these two guys could have really put on something pretty special if they were given the chance. Another thing that really did annoy me though, that my overriding thought was how they just kept almost. The commentary didn't seem to care about the match. They seemed to keep referring to the fact that Bulldog was going to be facing Taker. They seemed to mention it just so many times, and I was just like, just focus on the match a bit more. Maybe I would have got a bit more invested or taken note of what was going on in the ring, but I just kept thinking about, they just keep mentioning Raw, so, why should I care? Sort of thing.
Yeah, this was a match where if they were prepared to, they could have given this match far bigger billing. in the sense that Bam Bam hasn't really been doing a lot since he main evented, it was King of the Ring, wasn't it? Hasn't really done a lot since. You know, but he's still over. I mean, you know, we went through it back then. You know, I think it was still a mistake that they turned him babyface. But the matchup made sense. The result made sense. So I can't really be critical on that kind of level. If they're going to get Bulldog ready for Diesel, it makes sense for him to beat Bigelow. But the question was, why didn't you make it a bigger deal? Why was this just a match? Why not actually, you know, make it a number one contendership match if you want to do it like that? You know, so say, you know, which one of these will main event in your house for? That kind of thing. Rather than just having Bulldog beat Bam Bam, they could have made it a more marquee match. But as it was, this felt like, you know, another mid-show match for Bam Bam. You know, he had the match on the In Your House 2 against Henry Godwin. It just felt like another match that was thrown out there without much build. Yeah. The match itself was alright. You know, Craig, I mean, I suppose news you on the show. And just what do you think about, Bulldog as a heel? Craig.
I mean, he's got this sort of physique and everything that WWE could push to a heel, and probably do quite good business on the back of him being a big heel, but it's just that it just feels like they've just turned him and that should be enough sort of mentality to things, and it's not. It's just in the same way you can't just lump a guy going nowhere into $1 million corporation and hope that he suddenly becomes a main eventer. You can't just turn a sort of mid-card babyface into a heel and expect him to rise without doing something more with him. So it all depends. His success all depends on whether or not the WWF give him a ball to run with.
Kieran, same question.
I'm just not sure, Bob. Because I know how Bulldog is. I mean, I know he's not like the best guy to cut promos. So I think as long as they get, you know, he's going to get a decent mouthpiece, then I think he'll be okay. But like Craig says, it does just feel again, maybe like they did with Bam Bam, maybe they're just turning them just because. There doesn't appear to be...
They're turning him for a match rather than for a...
Yeah,
for
it's
a
like,
major.
well, we'll turn him for this because we need somebody to fight this guy. Or we'll turn this guy because we haven't got anybody to face this other guy who we really like. So it just feels like the minute they're turning people for the sake of it. So I think that, again, the proof is in the pudding, like with a lot of things at the minute.
Yeah, we will see. We see a clip from the WWF phone, the phone line. Sorry, I got a typo in notes. DiBiase and Henry Godwin seem to be recording messages concurrently. DiBiase is still covered in the pig slop. Out comes Bob Backlund. Backlund rambles on, his usual shtick. At one point, Ross simply says, "You reckon he's going to make a point?" He introduces Dean Douglas, who's wearing some singlet. Craig, what do you think of this?
It's a remarkable singlet.
Like,
Dean Douglas looks
turquoise
fantastic.
blue with a big exclamation mark on the back.
I don't know why that's never been done before.
I know why.
I'm sorry. It's quality, that thing. With the exclamation mark, I was as he's walking down, just like, it's blue, it's blue. And then he turns and that thing on the back, and I was just like, my God, what is, yeah. It's a singlet. Yeah.
I kind of like the whole kind of, you know, university type logo on the front, that kind of thing. But I don't know that he needs to wrestle in a singlet, and I wouldn't have had the exclamation point like that. That kind of feels like they said, yeah, Dean, we've got your ring gear for you, and they showed him that, and it's like a rib. I don't know.
He didn't see the back of it.
No, maybe he didn't. Douglas said he's proud of Backlund. Douglas pulls a rare one and performs the introduction of Razor himself, or he does introduce him as the loser. And we move on to Dean Douglas with Bob Backlund against Razor Ramon. Ramon comes out and charges at Douglas, sending him flying over the top rope. Douglas preposterously, exclamation mark at the back of his singlet. We get some quick technical exchanges. Douglas sits out in the corner and goes Razor on. Douglas goes for a hip toss, but Razor reverses it and chucks him over the top rope. We cut to another picture-in-picture. Jim Cornette is addressing Yokozuna and King Mabel. Razor and Douglas exchange hammerlocks. Douglas slips over the top, then goes for a crossbody, but Razor catches him and hits a fall-away slam for a 2. Razor locks in an armbar, then gets a reaction from the crowd by slapping Douglas about a bit. Douglas goes for a float over Sunset Flip, but Razor stops in it and the pair exchange near falls. Razor hits a shoulder tackle on Douglas, then goes for a second, but Douglas throws him to the outside. He then drives Razor's back into the apron, then hits a body slam. Douglas hits a running knee into Razor's back, bumping him to the ring steps before driving his back into the ring post. Razor takes some more punishment in the ring before slapping Douglas with a right hand, which pops the crowd. Douglas hits a springboard splash from the second rope, continuing to work Razor's back with a back submission. Razor picks up Douglas on his shoulders and drops him hard onto the mat. Douglas, with that, still covers Razor, who just about kicks out. Razor drives him into opposite turnbuckles. Douglas gets to the top rope, hits a flying body press. Razor rolls through and almost gets a 3. Douglas then throws Razor into the ref, who goes down. Backlund attempts to revive the referee. Douglas goes for a second rope move, but Razor moves out of the way. Razor hits the Raiders edge. The 1-2-3 Kid then slides into the ring and counts the 3. Razor, with his back to the Kid, thinks he's won. He turns around and finds out it's the Kid, and they argue. Douglas rolls up Razor and gets the 3 count from the referee, who comes round. After the match, the replay shows Douglas has a handful of tights. Kieran.
I did enjoy this match for what it was, even with the slightly cheap ending, but you can kind of see where what the ending is sort of leading to, so I wasn't that too upset about it, because at least it had a direction. I thought, like you said, you alluded to at the beginning, Bob, I do enjoy watch, Shane or Dean Douglas wrestle. He does everything. The thing with him is, though, Bob, he seems to do everything really well, but he doesn't seem to have that one thing that is like truly exceptional. He's like really good in the ring, but you just want him to do maybe something a bit more. I don't really know. It's kind of a bit of a harsh point to make without actually suggesting what he could actually do. But I just feel like there's just something maybe missing. But I really did enjoy the match. I wasn't too bothered by the ending. You could say it was cheap or a bit screwy or a bit messy or whatever, but I like the tease of where they're going with 1-2-3 Kid and Razor Ramon. So overall, I really enjoyed this match, actually.
Craig.
It started off really, really grim and just a snore fest with Razor's armbar and then Douglas's surfboard. It picked up a little bit at the end. I certainly don't have the same level of enthusiasm for this as Kieran does. And I think the bit that annoyed me most is just, what's the point in 1-2-3 Kid running down and making the count? It just doesn't make any sense. It's just completely ridiculous.
Well, we had the 1-2-3 Kid acting as a de facto referee, and then Owen Hart acting as a de facto competitor in the main event. For as big as a fan I am of Douglas, I've never believed he's that good in the ring. And this was kind of like the first time, and even the ECW stuff you saw, generally he wasn't wrestling kind of big long main events. He wasn't even in the main event, even though he was champion. And yeah, the action was fine. I think there was a criticism, by Dale Meltzer that Douglas's, offense was a bit soft, which I think is a fair enough criticism, given that, so there was the bit where he was kind of on the attack in the middle. He took some quite soft rights. But yeah, I know what you mean, Kieran. I don't think he is a very good in-ring worker. I think he's decent. I think he's trained. I think he can go well with the right opponent, but I don't think the praise would stretch any further than that. But that being said, I like the program. I like the kind of, three-way feud. They've got the Kid and that kind of, the Kid and Razor, that kind of spilled into Raw, and kind of Douglas kind of driving a wedge between the two of them and getting the matches out of them as well. And yeah, save the comedy singlet. I've been actually quite impressed with what they've done with Douglas, and we had I think Craig, you were on for those initial discussions we had about Douglas in July, and those opening promos that just looked like death. And the one thing I've been quite impressed by Douglas is that he does seem to be getting a bit more character out of this Dean Douglas character now. The promos sound more like the Shane Douglas we know from ECW. Go on, Kieran.
Sorry, Bob. I was going to actually ask you to, because I've sort of been on the ECW side of things. So what kind of promos has he been doing? Is it kind of, he's coming as sort of Backlund's understudy and he's like... No,
the Backlund thing was entirely contained in this night. I don't know whether he just had Backlund on the thing. There didn't seem to be much reason for it, other than maybe they just thought, well, we've got Backlund, let's have him fill a couple of minutes. And also as well, they had the bit with the referee, so maybe they wanted someone to distract the ref while, something happened. There could have been that. But what Douglas has been doing has been these thing called, the report. What's he been doing? whatever it's called, where basically it's him in front of a chalkboard, and he's, he scratches his fingers down the chalkboard and then he gives people grades, basically, he gives, he gives people Fs, and, you'll see the promos on the older editions of Raw. But yeah, the promos have got better, but they are a bit kind of, it's moving away from this, but it is still much him trying to cut a promo as a teacher and kind of like crowbar these kind of grades in. Whereas, and there was a promo that we aired on the SummerSlam part of the show last month, where it's him talking about B for bad guy and all that. That was quite good, but it varies. I would say. Craig, any more on Douglas?
No, I'd certainly echo your earlier sentiments that he's certainly made something fairly good out of being given a hospital pass with a gimmick. So yeah, no, he's managed to do something quite well.
Okay, so if he can shrink those singlets in the wash, then maybe you better make the rest of it. After the match, Razor confronts the Kid and throws him into the ring. Razor slaps him hard and the two threaten to fight, but officials pull them apart. We cut backstage and Doc Hendricks is wearing some epic sunglasses for an interview with Shawn and Diesel. Shawn is frustrated about the lack of clarity for Yokozuna's partner. Diesel smells a rat. And next up, it's Bret Hart against Jean-Pierre Lafitte. Lafitte appears at ringside where Bret is posing in the ring. Bret goes for a tope and over-rotates, doing well not to do himself some serious damage as he lands on the outside. Lafitte works on Bret in the corner. Bret goes for a crucifix pin but only gets a 2. Bret works Lafitte's arm but he fights out and it's a lovely standing clothesline. Bret whips Lafitte into the corner, then goes for a shoulder tackle but Lafitte moves and Bret hits the ring post hard. That gets a cackle from Lawler on commentary. Lafitte then rounds Bret's shoulder into the ring post again. Lafitte runs at Bret, who sends him flying over the top to the outside. Lafitte lands on his feet, pulls Bret to the outside and slings him into the ring steps. That was pretty good, I put in my notes. Lafitte drops the leg from the top and Bret kicks out. Lafitte goes back to the top, but this time attempts a cannonball and meets the mat as Bret moves. Bret shakes for the sharpshooter but gets sent to the outside. Lafitte goes for a sunsault plancher to the outside, but Bret moves and Lafitte hits the mat hard. Bret then slaps him into the ring steps. Bret hits a Russian leg sweep, then goes for a roll-up and gets a 2. Lafitte hits a rolling fireman carry. Bret kicks out. Bret goes for a crossbody with Lafitte in the ropes. Lafitte moves and Bret gets tangled in the ropes. Lafitte goes to the top, attempts a splash, but Bret moves out of the way. Bret rolls Lafitte into the sharpshooter and Lafitte taps after the match. Bret gets his hand back on his jacket, which was the catalyst for this feud all along. Craig?
I really like this. I think, I'm a big Bret Hart mark, but I think this was just really good, and I like the fact that a lot of what Jean-Pierre Lafitte did was sort of stop Bret doing his usual 5 moves of doom stuff. So it just seemed like a very, very different Bret Hart match, because it wasn't just working towards the Russian leg sweep, backbreaker, driving elbow stuff. Yeah, no, I thought this was really good. I like Jean-Pierre Lafitte. I think the pirate gimmick's a little bit naff, but, well, I mean, he's probably not the worst offender when it comes to gimmicks in the WWF at this stage. But yeah, no, credible big man, Bret Hart, put together a good match. I still think Bret's sort of slightly wasted, having to face people like Jean-Pierre Lafitte, etc. But still, yeah, no, I thought this was fine. Really enjoyable.
Kieran?
Yeah, I kind of treat it in 2 ways. You could kind of be really, overly cynical here, Bob, and just say, it's a bloody pirate. It's a grown man dressed as a pirate nicking somebody's coat. So I kind of look past that and I'll just look at the match. And the match was just absolutely fantastic. And like Craig said, the biggest takeaway was I'd never seen that done, a Bret Hart match booked that way, where it was basically a guy who obviously wasn't brilliant in the ring, but what they did, they just accentuated all of his positives. And the way he was able to counteract those big 5 moves it was absolutely spot on, and it worked so well for this match. Easily the match of the night, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think you two are undercooking Lafitte's abilities a little bit. I mean, he's a pretty good worker. I mean, I think he thinks more highly of himself than that. I mean, there was the part of the notes in that story about him and Diesel was that, Lafitte's perception is that, he doesn't see anything about Shawn Michaels that's any different to his own ability. Now, I think that's, Yeah, bollocks. I don't think he's Shawn Michaels' ability in the ring, and he certainly doesn't have the same levels of charisma. But he's a pretty good worker, and that showed here. I mean, there was, the feet does a somersault planche to the outside and just lands back first on the matting, which looked painful. Brett did the tope at the start of the match and nearly ended up landing on his head because he kind of overcooked it a bit. But yeah, the action here was really good. As I say, this is the problem really with a couple of the matches was that, you've got by WWF standards, quite a well padded out character in Lafitte in terms of the build and the vignettes. They haven't really done much for him since. And you've got Bret Hart, who, as Jeff's not here, I will say it for him, Bret Hart, one of possibly the best worker in the world right now. So I would expect these guys, if they were given the time, and they were, to have a very good match. But, Kieran, it was just a match that just didn't really have, what did it matter? Like, so Lafitte's got Bret's jacket. Who cares?
It's a bloody coat. Do you know what I was thinking? I actually made a note and I was thinking, again, this is what I tend to do, is when I don't like something, I tend to just go off into Kieran Booker mode. So I'm like, set the jacket on fire. Do you know what I mean? He's probably got...
It's an expensive jacket, though. I mean, they spent a lot of money on that Raw intro this month. Budget only goes so far.
That's probably why the Brett's jacket's so expensive. That's like Shane Douglas is wrestling in that singlet. That's probably why that cheap shit. But do something with a jacket. I don't know. Make up a dummy jacket. Do like a switcheroo, and then have Lafitte come out on Raw and set the jacket on fire as though it's like he's burning.
I think you're overcooking the amount of thought process they.
This is my trouble. But this is my trouble. You see, it's if you're going to have the jacket as the reason for the feud, then do something with the jacket. Not that just he nicked it. I don't know, just rip it a bit or something, I don't know. Take some of the sequins out.
The match did end, Brett did get his jacket back, and that was the end of the programme. Craig, any more thoughts?
Nothing really to add to that sort of amusing discussion between you two. No, but yeah, I would say this was the best match of the night for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, you put two guys like this, give them enough time, they're going to have a fun match pretty much regardless. This is, I mean, Craig, thoughts on Brett at the moment? I mean, it just feels like Brett's a babyface, Diesel's a babyface, Shawn's a babyface. We can't get them all in the main event, so we just won't. As a result, Brett's just leaping from feud to feud, program to program, without any real direction, because they still think highly enough of him where he's not going to lose a match on pay-per-view. But they don't think highly enough of him where he's going to be in a match of consequence. So that's where we end up with him facing Hakushi, Lawler, Isaac Yankem and Jean-Pierre Lafitte, who's who of the WWF mid-card.
Yeah, I think one good thing is certainly seems to be moving away from having anything to do with Lawler, unless Jean-Pierre Lafitte is Jerry Lawler's pirate. But yeah, I'd agree. It's just sort of, Bret Hart needs something. There's Jean-Pierre Lafitte. What can we do quickly to get something? Let's have Jean-Pierre Lafitte because he's a pirate and they steal things. Let's have him steal something of Bret Hart's. Let's have him steal the jacket. There's a pay-per-view match, and it's just like, yeah, it's not though, is it? But gracefully they were able to, through their work, make it a match that you cared about, because on paper, he stole my jacket is a shit reason for a wrestling match.
Craig, is this the weakness? I could look up in a sec. Craig, is this the weakness of the monthly pay-per-view format? Is that they realise that we need Bret Hart on this show, but they just don't have enough time or resources to get a program together that really makes sense?
The thing is, though, you say, is this a problem with a monthly pay-per-view, and do they not have enough time? But they've got plenty of time. They've got a weekly episode of Raw and a pay-per-view every month to be doing things. I think it's just that they're still trying to catch up. Maybe the booking team clearly are used to booking for 5 or 6 events a year rather than 12. So I think they're maybe sort of slightly stuck in their ways and struggling to come up with as many storylines as are required for a monthly event to really work. I think the problem's just in the writing. But they've got they've got a surprising amount of credible and quite good people to write for. I just think that they're not used to having to turn around quite as much.
Kieran?
Yeah, I just think it smacks of. I definitely agree with Craig about the writers might be struggling, but I think it also smacks of maybe that there's so much focus on sort of Razor, Shawn, Diesel, and we all know, you know, the group that they are. I think that's a lot of the reason, and I think you got to give Bret. I'm not a massive Bret Hart fan. I'll give him a lot of credit though, because he could easily sort of turn around and get his arse in his hands and sort of say, well, what about me? What about me? But the guy doesn't, and the guy will steal the show every time he's on there. The last time I saw him was Hakushi, and he had the best match on that In Your House as well, and he did the same thing here. So while it might be that, you know, the writers might be struggling or coming up with creative ideas or something for Bret to do, he still comes out every night and he puts his heart and soul and 100% effort into it. And I think that says a lot, I think.
Well, Kieran, I'll give you full credit for the point you're making, but the phrase "get his arse in his hands" was certainly, yeah. We'll move on that note. We're backstage with Cornette, Mr. Fuji, Yokozuna, Doc Hendricks, and Gorilla Monsoon. Standing alongside Yokozuna is the British Bulldog. Kieran, a good time to ask really, what did you think of this kind of story that was stitched throughout the show? I mean, well, forget what comes next, but in terms of at this point, in terms of kind of giving a coherent story to knit between the matches, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't mind. I actually quite like this thing where there's like a through line throughout the whole pay-per-view, and especially when it's Cornette, I'm immediately invested in it because I think the guy's just money. When he was talking to Sid, I was like, oh, fucking hell no. But at least they didn't go down that route. So yes, but I did appreciate the through line and how it gave a bit of a build to the match, sort of, you know, what's going to happen, you know. Is Owen coming back? He is coming back at the beginning, then it sort of turns out we need to get another partner, so now he's trying to run around get him. And I did like it, Bob. I did like that.
Craig?
Yeah, I'm with Kieran. Nothing really I can add to that. I thought, yeah, I think it's quite good. Yeah.
We go out and Alundra Blaze is out modelling the t-shirt for the pay-per-view. They're trying to get people to buy the shirt, which features all 4 competitors for the main event, except Owen Hart is no longer in the main event. Yes, they literally tried to sell you to buy a pay-per-view shirt with the wrong guy in it. You know, whatever. And we come out, it's Yokozuna and the British Bulldog with Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji versus Diesel and Shawn Michaels in a triple header match with all 3 titles on the line. Now Jim Cornette did, in the promo insert earlier, did kind of explain all this. But yeah, so if Shawn or Diesel pinned either Yokozuna or or Bulldog in this case, Shawn Diesel become tag champions. Things are a bit more complicated the way around. If either Bulldog or Yokozuna pinned Shawn, then whoever pinned Shawn became his Continental Champion. And if either Bulldog or Yokozuna pinned Diesel, then whoever pinned Diesel would become the WWF Champion. So theoretically, if Yokozuna had pinned Diesel, Shawn would have stayed IC Champion, but Yokozuna would have won the WWF Championship. Also conspicuous in all of this was when they were building the match when Owen Hart was still in it, they weren't really all that keen on suggesting that Owen Hart could win the WWF Championship. It very much seemed to be, well, if Yokozuna or Owen Hart pins Shawn, then they'll win the Intercontinental title. And if Yokozuna pins Diesel, he'll win the WWF Championship. So, you know, they were a bit all over the place there. We will discuss it after the TV report in terms of what they did next. But Craig, I guess it's a good time to ask, what do you think of this stipulation? Because I thought going in, it was a really clever idea.
Yeah, I mean, credit for credit's due for coming up with something different. So yeah, I liked the idea. I wondered if it would maybe lead to some more sort of, you know, causing tension between teams. Maybe, I don't know, like Yoko or Owen fighting over who was to pin Diesel or something like that. But I mean, I appreciate it didn't happen. But it's scope for them to go down that route if they'd wanted to. But yeah, I mean, as a sort of gimmick for a match, it's one that gives you a lot of freedom and direction to go down.
Kieran?
Yeah, it kind of, you know, credit to Shawn and Diesel. You know, they've obviously been more cynical about it probably than you guys. I would probably say that maybe they worked their way to getting all these belts into the one match, but on the flip side of that, it is actually very unique. It's probably not something you're going to see that many times while you're watching wrestling. So there's a lot of scope for them to go down. You know, I actually thought that maybe there was going to be sort of maybe a bit of friction coming up between Diesel and Shawn. sort of maybe one of them not wanting to lose the belt, so maybe they'll sort of like ignore a tag or whatever. It just gives a lot of scope for where the match could go. So it was actually a really good idea.
We start with Shawn and Bulldog. Bulldog twice grabs Michaels by the legs, who spins him out. Michaels sends Bulldog to the outside, but is able to flip himself back into the ring. Yokozuna charges Michaels in the ring, who fights back, and Diesel evens up the score. Yokozuna gets sent to the outside. Shawn does his best sumo impression. Yokozuna is as ever on point with his facial expressions. They charge at each other. Shawn slides underneath, bounces off the ropes, and runs to a back elbow. Yokozuna goes to drop an elbow of his own, but Shawn moves. We're now going with Bulldog and Diesel in the ring. Bulldog attempts a high angle suplex, but can't get Diesel up. Bulldog resets and hits it second time around. Shawn jumps off Diesel's shoulders for a splash, but Bulldog kicks out for a 2. Bulldog picks up Shawn and crotches him on the top rope. With the action on the outside, Yokozuna just marks his territory mid-ring. Sorry, there's a euphemism there for having a shit. He didn't do that. Taking over from Bulldog. Shawn does. That's what I've got written. I read it verbatim. He just stood there and posed. He didn't have a shit. Taking over from Bulldog. Shawn does a flippy thing in the corner, but stays in the ring. Bulldog body slams Shawn on the outside. Jim Ross points out that Michaels and Diesel never lost the tag titles. They were stripped of them after the pair disbanded last year. Bulldog clotheslines Michaels, then shouts, "You're next" at Diesel. Yokozuna once again just climbs to the ring without a tag. Yokozuna goes for a bonsai drop, but Shawn moves out, but it's still Sparko. Diesel and Bulldog tag in. Diesel drapes Bulldog over the second rope, then drops a leg across his shoulders. All 4 men get in the ring and the heels get smashed together, Bulldog coming off worse. Shawn and Diesel sling Bulldog into Yokozuna in the corner. Bulldog falls down and Yokozuna comes crashing down on top of him, which pops the crowd. Bulldog runs into a big boot, then sets for a jackknife. Diesel sets for a jackknife. Shawn deals with Cornette, but Yokozuna hits a fallaway slam on Diesel. Shawn super kicks Yokozuna, though he hits a power slam on Diesel. Shawn breaks up the pin with a top rope elbow drop. Owen Hart runs out, jumps off the turnbuckle, eats a jackknife powerbomb, and Diesel pins him. The WWF taking a page out of WCW's book with a finish involving a guy not in the match. Craig.
For me, there was too much Yokozuna in this one. I think that's obviously we'll come to the finish because the finish was the big problem, but in terms of the match itself, just far too much Yokozuna. If it had been Yokozuna replaced by the Bulldog to team with Owen Hart, this would have been far better, but it wasn't, and Yoko spent far too much time in the ring for this to be anything other than quite average, despite the valiant attempts of the other 3 men in it.
Kieran?
Yeah, I kind of the same thing. I really enjoyed it up until Yoko comes in. I mean, I enjoyed the stuff with Shawn all the way up to that point, and then Yoko comes in, and it's just like, and understandably, I mean, the guy's like half a bloody ton. So, but it's just too many. It's too many rest holds. We'll get to the finish in a bit. But the match was okay. It was just immediately Yoko comes in, things slow down. You get up to the finish, and then it's just like, oh, it was okay. It was all right.
I quite enjoyed this. I'm a pretty big Yokozuna fan, and I can't necessarily disagree massively with the idea that Yokozuna probably got involved a bit too much. And one of the strengths of his tag team with Owen Hart, in the past is that, Owen could do a bulk of the workload and Yokozuna will just have these moments. So there probably were a few too many of those. But I thought the bit with him and Shawn, where they do the kind of sumo pose across the ring, I thought that was really good. Yokozuna's facial expressions, I think, are unrivaled in the company. The match didn't really pick up, but it was a shame in the sense that I think one thing one of you mentioned before we started the review was that there were so many possibilities and they never really got to the point where they never really told the audience that Shawn and Diesel were vulnerable. They never got in any situation where you thought, Diesel was hardly ever in the ring, and fair enough, when you got Yokozuna in, you probably want Shawn to counteract him. But they never put either of them in a position where you thought, oh wow, the titles might change, one of the major titles might change hands. And then we get to the finish, Kieran.
Yeah, oh god, I just hate finishes like this where it's all centering around a guy that's not even booked in the match, and you just instantly, like I said way back in like the preamble before we started the review, anything like this, it just sours everything. It sours the match. I mean, the Bret Hart match is really good, but it just sours the whole thing. I just hated this finish. Hated it.
Craig?
It's like earlier on I was talking about how stupid the 1, 2, 3 kid coming in and doing the count is because it doesn't make any sense. This is even worse. Why is the referee not saying, get out of the ring, Owen Hart, what are you doing, rather than counting his shoulders to the mat?
Why is Diesel pinning him?
There were so many questions.
And mind-numbing.
Yeah, I mean, it just... Again, it was a disappointment. You see the stipulation going in and you think, oh, and this is the thing we go back to, don't piss off your pay-per-view audience, for God's sake. Like, these are the guys who pay the money to watch your programming. Like, the stipulation going in was a really good one. They had the thing on Raw beforehand. Grim Monsoon said, you will see a title change. Great. And yes, technically we did. But and then you get the bait and switch 24 hours later with the reversal. It was all just, it was a shame. I mean, I thought the match was set up fine. I think I'd have, for me, I thought the best solution going in would have been to have Owen pin Shawn.
Definitely.
With potentially, if we're really going to fancy book this thing, have Shawn and Diesel get into an argument. That was the one thing Jim Cornette spoke about on Raw. The last time you were together, you split up. That was the thing, the last time you had this big kind of matchup, it all fell apart. That was referring back to, it would have been SummerSlam, I think. No, it would have been before that. It was Survivor Series last year, but it would have been before that anyway. And yeah, I would have done that, and, maybe not necessarily Diesel turn heel, but kind of start that heel turn, because, logically they're going to get that match pretty quickly, because they haven't got many opponents for Diesel as is. Like, you might as well start the Diesel heel turn now, have him and Shawn have an argument, maybe have Diesel lay out Shawn, then Owen comes in, picks up the victory, wins the IC title. That gets the IC title off Shawn, which I think they need to do. And then you can start that program, maybe with, Diesel's the heel, and, in your house 3, you probably wouldn't go to Diesel and Shawn straight away. I would have done it like that. As much as I'm a bigger fan of Yokozuna, like, he wasn't going to win either of the belts. Owen winning the WWF title would have been a really odd move, given that they've done nothing with Owen the last 7 or 8 months. But I think Owen with the IC title would at the very least give it, not that Shawn's a bad worker by any means, but Shawn shouldn't be in that big working second man spot. He should be in the main programs right now. He's had a great year, as Jeff said last month. He's the best guy they've got, and he shouldn't be. The fact that you got those two on top and Bret and the Raw babyfaces just doesn't work. Craig, what would you have done? Booked going into this match, how would you have got out of it?
In terms of the main event itself,
yeah,
I think I would have just stuck with a clean finish, just avoided all that nonsense. That's certainly the first thing. You don't really want all your titles on one group all 4 titles on 2 guys either. I think I'd have been keen to avoid that, but then again, you don't really want to close a pay-per-view with a non-finish or like a double count out or something like that. It's tricky. I mean, we were full of praise at the start about the sort of directions it could take, but really it only led to one point of guys having all 4 titles. If I'd had any sort of control over things, I'd have certainly avoided the nonsense of the belts, the bait and switch stuff that would happen the next night. I'd have been definitely keen to avoid that.
And at this stage, I don't know why they couldn't have just pinned Yokozuna. They didn't want to put the tag titles on Shawn and Diesel, so I guess they wanted a way of getting out of it. But I don't know. Kieran, what would you have done? How would you have got out of this?
I'm not going to go too in depth with like how I might have booked it. It's just if you're gonna go this way, if this was the way they were going to go, and I don't know whether there was some audible call and someone just said, "Owen, just run out there and do something with it."
No, that wasn't that. No, that was very much the plan.
So if this was the plan, if you're going to put all 4 titles in that corner with Diesel and Shawn, at least tease something that there is some sort of friction. So at least your takeaways are, yes, Diesel, if you like them, if Diesel and Shawn have got all the belts, but hang on a minute, there's something rotten in Denmark here. There's probably, there's just tease something and just give us something to hold on to, because otherwise this just looks like a really messy finish. And now, like, two blokes have got all 4 titles. So if I was going to go anyway, I probably would have done a cleaner finish, like Craig said. And if this, have all 4 titles, but at least give us something going forward as to maybe a bit of friction between Diesel and Shawn.
Something rotten in Denmark?
What
does that mean?
I don't know. It's one of my dad's sayings.
Oh, okay. I'll write down, put his ass in his hands. We'll put those together. Craig, your overall thoughts on this show and a score rating out of 10?
This podcast or the actual in your life?
Well, both if you like.
I've learnt a lot of whimsical musings from Kieran that I'm going to try and throw into conversations, and just because I get off on people looking at me like I'm a weirdo. I've enjoyed the podcast, but in terms of the In Your House, I thought it was fine. I would probably say 6 out of 10. I think I'm going to come back to the point I made about booking. I think that they're not quite caught up with having to book monthly pay-per-views, and sometimes things just seem cobbled together and just thrown in and just hoping it works. And some of the matches, whilst I enjoyed the Bret Hart Jean-Pierre Lafitte match, things like Sid and Henry Gordon, whilst never a classic, may have been improved if there was something a little bit more meaningful that led to it, if it was a blow off of a stronger feud. But yeah, in terms of what they were able to cobble together, 6 out of 10 for me.
Kieran?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Bret Hart match. That instantly got it up to sort of like a 4 or a 5. I did like the Razor match, mainly because I can see where they're going with the 1, 2, 3 kid stuff. So while the finish wasn't brilliant, it was okay, and I thought the main event was okay, but again the ending soured it. So I'll go the same as Craig. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Overall, I thought it was like one really good match and a couple of little bit of nuggets that I can get my teeth into going forward. But it was okay overall.
Yeah, hat-trick of 6s. It was, if you paid $15, you got your money's worth. You didn't get a great show, but you got a decent $15 show, some good action, some stuff that as we've gone through wasn't particularly, all that clever or all that well done. But no, there's even the C match I think stunk out the joint. It wasn't really long enough. There's nothing on there that really bombed, and there was some good stuff. I thought, the Douglas Razor match was good. The title match, the main event match, I thought was decent with a pretty cop out finish, and the Bret Jean-Pierre Lafitte match was very good.
Last night, which was exactly what Jim Cornette's attorney gleefully pleaded.
Be my guest.
Did you not state that for last night's purposes, that the referee's decision was final in the match? Did you not state that, Mr. Monsoon?
No, Mr.
Monsoon. Did you or did you not state that the referee's decision was final?
I did.
Thank you, Mr. Monsoon. And did you not also state that the British Bulldog was a tag team champion along with Yokozuna last night? Did you not state that as well?
There were extenuating circumstances.
No. In front of millions of people all around the country, Mr. Monsoon. Did you not state that?
I did.
When the referee, whose decision is final, allowed Owen Hart to participate in the match, Owen Hart was in fact not a recognized tag team champion last night. Thus, under the threat of legal action by Jim Cornette's barrister, this embarrassing technicality forced Mr. Monsoon to once again recognize Yokozuna and Owen Hart as the WWF tag team champions. However, much to the chagrin of Jim Cornette and company, however, Mr. Monsoon further ordered a future rematch with Diesel and Shawn Michaels, and further ordered that the previously non-title sanctioned match tonight with the Smoking Guns would in fact be for the WWF Tag Team Championship.
Can he do that?
We open up the final Raw in September on the 25th. During the introduction, we see Jim Cornette arguing with Gorilla Monsoon about the outcome of the match In Your House last night. In a voiceover, Vince McMahon says that the titles have been returned to Owen and Yokozuna, but they must face Diesel and Shawn at a later date, as well as the Smoking Guns tonight. Marty Jannetty is back. He's facing Skip. At one point, Jannetty hugs Sunny, which gets a pop from the crowd. She isn't expecting it, so turns around to slap him, but Jannetty ducks and she slaps Skip instead, which pops the crowd. Dee Douglas is on the R-Way, taking notes. Jannetty wins by dropping a forearm from the top rope. Cornette didn't get much time to wait, as the Smoking Guns defeated Yokozuna and Owen Hart to win the WWF Tag Team titles. The Guns hit their double team finisher on Owen. Yokozuna went to break up the pin, but Bart moved and he ended up squashing Owen. Bart covered Owen and the crowd popped big for the title change. After the match, Michaels and Diesel come out to celebrate with the new champs. Despite beating him cleanly In Your House, Bret Hart will face Jean-Pierre Lafitte again on Raw next week. The 1-2-3 Kid will also face Razor Ramon. Doc Hendricks calls the prospect of Undertaker against King Mabel at In Your House for a train wreck. He's not wrong. Along with announcing other matches for the next pay-per-view, including Bulldog against Diesel, Gorilla Monsoon says Bret Hart will face the WWF Champion at Survivor Series. During the main event between Undertaker and the British Bulldog, Undertaker continuing his run of having far better matches on television than pay-per-view. Waylon Mercy is shown looking on from the crowd. In the end, King Mabel comes out and hits a belly-to-belly on Undertaker before Bulldog hit a running power slam and Mabel drops the leg. Shawn Michaels and Diesel, apparently the only two baby faces on the roster, come out and run the heels off. Next out is Yokozuna and Owen Hart, they're followed by the Smoking Guns, and the faces run off the heels, and Undertaker shakes hands with Shawn and the Guns as we go off the air. And we come out of the pay-per-view to kind of go back a week or two to cover Raw. I mean, I did consider doing this first, but I didn't think our discussion was significant enough, or will be, to warrant putting it first. But to look at the 11th of September edition of Monday Night Raw, the first that went ahead against WCW Monday Nitro. We had a Razor Ramon against the British Bulldog, and in a DQ. We had a kind of a big in-ring angle with the Kid and Razor. We then got a couple of squash match victories for the Smoking Guns and Isaac Yankem, and then the main event, which Eric Bischoff said, Shawn Michaels beats the big guy with the super kick on commentary on Nitro, with Michaels beats Psycho Sid with a trio of super kicks to retain his Intercontinental title. Then we get a kind of post-match interview with Doc Hendricks with Shawn and Diesel. Craig, what did you think of this as a show going up against Nitro?
You could see that WWF was spooked, certainly, and I mean that's obviously a good thing that they realised they needed to up their game. Yeah, I mean the idea that there was, previously it was like squash match, and two mid-carders fighting, so it felt more important, and that's it's good that WCW have pushed WWF down that route.
Kieran?
Yeah, exactly the same thing. That was the biggest note. Everything feels now more important on Raw. It doesn't just feel like we're going to make this guy look super strong by putting him in there against any old, just any old jobber. We're actually going to give people things to do on Raw. We're going to sort of move storylines on. We're going to do interesting things with storylines that we may not have done before on Raw. So I actually think it's actually given them a good kick in the arse, to actually get things moving, because they've obviously been in a bit of a creative rut recently, the WWF. So maybe a change of tact on Raw, maybe some better booking at the pay-per-views. But all in all, I think Nitro's just going to give them that little bit of a push. Whether they take the ball and really carry it is another thing, Bob, because that requires some really big changes, if you ask me. It's not just simply you're going to have to make Raw look a bit better or do some more stuff on Raw. You're really going to have to change things to compete, or they probably think they do anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we'll cover the WCW stuff over on that part of the show, but yeah, I thought this was a good effort. I mean, I think both companies are in danger of, essentially, okay, WCW are doing Luger against Hogan, let's do Shawn against Sid, and obviously they had this match in the can, and one thing, there were brief reports was that they're actually considering an emergency taping between the 4th of September after Nitro aired and the 11th, so they could plug in a couple of extra matches. They didn't end up doing that, and what I think the emergency taping ended up being was the big fancy new Raw intro, which I'll come to in a minute. But no, I think in terms of, you know, having bigger name matches is better. It's going to give people more reason to be invested. And when you look at some of the stuff that WCW are pumping out, I think to a point you've got to follow them, because they were pumping out not only big matches, but they were getting so much in an hour, certainly the first couple of episodes of Nitro that I've seen so far. And so, yeah, I think they did right. I thought this initial show was pretty good. A good, and actually probably a surprisingly good main event between Shawn and Sid. But Craig, are both companies going to fall into the trap where they're thinking, right, let's present all these marquee matches, despite the fact we have absolutely no intention of them ending cleanly? Are we just going to be in a trap where these shows are very quickly going to become big name against slightly less big name, DQ finish?
Yep, that's one concern, and the other concern is the idea that if you're using the bigger guys, you're going to have to, on a weekly basis, you're going to have to, you can't just throw them together, you have to sort of give them a storyline or a reason for the feud. So it's adding a lot more pressure on the writing team that we've criticised already, because previously it was like, we'll just put Shawn Michaels in there against skinny local guy in a rubbish singlet and watch him beat him in 2.5 minutes.
That's no way to describe Dean Douglas, come on.
That's a glorious singlet. But yeah, so yeah, it's adding a lot more pressure on a creative team that isn't all that creative as it is. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Kieran, same question?
Yeah, I think this is kind of what I was alluding to. They're going to have to try and go from like 0 to not just 60, but they're going to have to try and go from 0 to 100. But they can't really make any mistakes. Do you know what I mean? They can't just start putting people together and just say, oh, well, we can't really have that too much of, we can't do that too much. We don't want to make someone look that weak on Raw, so let's just have a few DQ finishes, some double count outs. And of course the danger with that is then by the time you get to a pay-per-view, the feuds, there's just no build to any feuds because nobody's allowed to look slightly weak. You can't see like Diesel, even like, I don't know, he may not even get disqualified himself. Do you know what I mean? That's my fear. Is that although it's going to push the creative to do certain things, are they going to have the backup to do it from, say, Vince and that? And is the talent going to be, going to flow along with it?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest concern, is that they just don't have the depth of talent in terms of characters that are over and in terms of wrestlers that can carry these matches. The one thing WCW have done in signing Sabu, Benoit, Guerrero, Malenko, they signed a hell of a lot of work rate. All those guys would come in and on ability would stand right atop with Shawn and Brett and the Kid in terms of guys that can go in the ring. The WWF just don't have that. They just don't have that depth of roster. And the concern is, do they then try and follow just by overexposing Brett and Shawn, and the Kid and guys like that? Like, I mean, Brett, Shawn, Kid, Owen, beyond that, what, Akushi, Razor, like we're pretty quickly falling into the realms of guys that are decent workers but are no better. And there's also the concern, they've got other guys. There's also the concern where they have over enough characters. I mean, they've got, Goldust, Dustin Rhodes coming in, playing this, completely wacky character that I think we're going to see debut next month. The question is, he can work. We know that. Does the character suit itself to that kind of matches? I don't know. And they've got guys like Undertaker. I don't think you want to be in the book of overexposing Undertaker. I think one of the reasons that he's so over is that he doesn't appear all that frequently. And I don't know that they want to be in that business either. So it's a difficult balance to strike, and I think they're going to have to really use their resources well. They have to be very particular over where they put guys and who they push and the kind of characters they push. The other thing to discuss on TV is obviously the fallout of what happened in your house. I didn't cover it in the TV report you'd have just heard, but obviously we had Cornette and his attorney in a quite entertaining segment with Gorilla Monsoon basically arguing the toss over what happened at the pay-per-view. And then we got the Smoking Guns defeating Yokozuna and Owen Hart cleanly to win the WWF tag team titles. Craig, this is the fallout of what happened at the pay-per-view. Yeah, I like the fact they've got the titles on the Guns. I think that makes sense, but I think I'd be highly pissed off if I paid $15 to see a show on the Sunday promising a title change, and then not only did they reverse the result of the decision on the Monday, they then ended up having Yokozuna and Owen Hart lose the titles anyway.
Yeah, you question what logic went into thinking this was the best way to deal with things. Yeah, I'd be pretty hacked off if I'd bought it on the strength of the title change and saw that silliness the next night on Raw. Well, you would have expected some daftness considering a guy that wasn't in the match got pinned for the title change. So yeah, it's just all over the place and just it's really stupid and just treating fans as if they are stupid.
Kieran?
Yeah, they just made a rod for their own back, Bob, with the way the pay-per-view went down, and it's just everything that happens is just symptomatic of the pay-per-view. Like you said, everything that comes after it is just a result of just really daft booking, and it just continued till you get to this point. By which point now, I mean, how I'm not speaking for people, but how credible is this Guns run with the belts going to be, or are they just going to lose it next week? Because you don't know where this sort of booking might end.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the plans are really for Owen Hart and Yokozuna. I think it's a good tag team for both of them right now. I don't think there's much. I don't know what physical state Yokozuna's in to go back as a singles guy. We discussed that before. Owen Hart's certainly ready to be, as I say, as I spoke about earlier, is probably an Intercontinental title worthy guy. I don't know whether they're going to give him that kind of responsibility or that kind of championship. But yeah, no, I think the Guns have been. That they've been a team they wanted to put the titles on for a while, I think. They just haven't really got around to it or got in a position where they felt they were able to. But the Guns are in a position where they're the best tag team they've got. They might as well run with them for a while until they can find the next set of challenges if it's not going to be Owen Hart and Yokozuna. I don't think Diesel and Shawn should be anywhere near it. But yeah, there does seem to be a distinct lack of depth now, and other head shrinkers don't exist because, they split Fatu off and all of that. But yeah, if I bought the pay-per-view, expect to see a title change, I think I'd be quite pissed off how it went down. I don't think the way they did it was, I think had they come up with a more creative way of having a screwy finish in the main event, I don't think it'd be quite so bad. I think it was just the fact it was so obtusely wrong, was that Owen Hart just ran out, got pinned for a match he wasn't in. Maybe if they'd have done a bit where, Owen Hart ran out and, maybe they could have had it where Hart ran out, argued with Bulldog, said, no, I'm in this match, and then kind of, maybe like laid Bulldog out or something, like almost like put himself into the match voluntarily, lost the match, and then on Monday have Jim Cornette say, well, yeah, but you said that it was Bulldog. I think if you'd have been a bit more clever with that, it might not have been quite so bad. I think just the fact that it was like, they might as well have just got off the air without a finish and gone, yeah, we screwed you, ha-ha, middle fingers up to the camera as they went off air. Like, they might as well have done that. At least they'd have done a slightly better, if they'd have got there in a slightly more clever way. Owen Hart arrives in the arena and says, no, I'm fighting this match. Him and Bulldog get into an argument. Bulldog, storms off in a huff or whatever, and then Owen gets pinned, and then Cornette comes out and says, well, yeah, but Owen wasn't in the match. Like, that at least would have made sense, because it also would have made Cornette look really, really clever if he'd have kind of manufactured this argument as a way of covering this match. It would have made sense, but I don't know. The other thing we would have discussed on the WCW part as well. Let's discuss this from the WWF side, is the departure of Lex Luger. Kieran, I mean, Luger's a guy who apparently, as the story goes, Vince said, you can go negotiate with WCW. He went, they didn't agree terms. Luger came back and said, look, I'm still working with you guys. And then Vince thought, right, okay, I can put him in a more prominent position. This month, right before Nitro, they taped an episode of Superstars where Luger lost to King Mabel, or no, Luger and King Mabel went to a DQ count out, I think. But clearly Luger was in a position where they wanted to, not push him as a top guy, but put him back in that realm, and I think they may have thought about turning him heel. And then a few days later ends up on Nitro. I mean, Kieran, from a WF perspective, is it more of a case of the fact he's gone to WCW rather than they've lost him that's a big deal?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, probably talked about him sort of ad nauseum probably throughout the podcast, but I don't think he's a massive loss, if I'm honest, Bob. He was totally unremarkable as a heel when he did the old geezer in the mirror narcissist thing. The babyface run wasn't that much better. I think Bischoff and WCW maybe do this as sort of a point scoring thing, and kind of a thing where they're going to they're obviously they're trying to hype up the first Nitro. So in that way, yes, you could kind of see it from WCW's point of view. They're getting one over, a bit of point scoring. They've obviously got a name that everyone knows. But in terms of the WWF side, what we're talking about, I don't see it as a major loss at all, Bob. I just don't think he was that valued. If anything, if he'd have stayed on the WWF roster, he's a name they could have put somebody better up against. That would have been about it.
Yeah, I think that the thing that will be causing more concern is the fact that they lost him to WCW rather than lost him. I'm no fan of Luger either. WWF tried hard, and just fans weren't really interested in him. It's a shame. I thought actually at the end the stuff with Bulldog could have led to something. I quite liked the idea of the tag team itself, and it was never a sort of long-term thing. It seemed to me like it had a play-off of leading to a break-up and the pair feuding. It's a shame we never got to see that. Who knows how that might have panned out. But yeah, I think the thing that'll irk the WWF most will be the fact that they lost him to WCW. He appeared in the first Nitro and allowed WCW to fire the first shots.
Yeah, I mean, as Kieran said, we've done the Luger thing to death over the last couple of years. Just go back. The first show we did was me, Craig, and Colin doing SummerSlam '93, which should have been the start, and they bottled it there. But yeah, Luger's decent, and I think that was the thing. As much as they were probably over pushing him in '93, early '94, they probably didn't get enough out of him from mid '94 through to last month kind of thing. But yeah, they were clearly in a position where they didn't want to do much with him. The whole thing about the contract was that any contract they would have offered him subsequently wouldn't have been anywhere near the level he would have been on previously, because it would have reflected his status as more of a mid-card type guy. But yeah, I don't think losing him is a big loss, because I don't think they were going to do a lot with him. I don't think he has that much to offer. WCW picking him up is a big issue, but ultimately, someday soon, once the gloss has worn off, once the dust has settled, Eric Bischoff is going to wake up and think, oh, fuck, I've got Lex Luger. How do we manage that? For all the big bang on the firework when Luger comes out, it was great. I mean, and the matchup was perfect. Luger against Hogan was perfect. In many ways, they blew their load too early for the sake of a rating, in the sense that they really could have made more of a deal out of, the guy WWF thought could have replaced Hulk Hogan against Hulk Hogan. Let's see who's better. Let's solve this once and for all. He filled in the Vader slot, which is fair enough, but we're gonna get to October and November, and it's still Lex Luger. The guy is still decent but no better in the ring. The guy is still a decent but no better promo, with a very good body, but a guy that's been around for long enough now where if he was gonna make it, he would have made it. He's been in both companies. If he was going to stick, he would have stuck by now, and he just hasn't. And that's why we'll end this month's show. I'd like to thank Kieran Mitchell. Kieran?
Thank you very much, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. You are on Twitter?
I am indeed, at the ever-popular Jotun Thrash 666.
And Craig Olsen?
A pleasure as always. Wonderfully hosted by your good self there, Bob.
Thank you very much. Sucking up does help with Craig wants to appear on next month's show. Craig, where can people find you on Twitter?
Yeah, they can find me writing about wrestling largely from a retro slant at ringthedamnbell.wordpress.com, and the Twitter handle is the same, ringthedamnbell, but it's the last L is replaced by a 1 because some wrong-in had previously registered the Ring the Damn Bell.
Replace the L with the 1. There we go. Yes, you've got a lot of other listening to do. I don't know how, obviously, by the time this will be out, we'll have recorded it. I'm anticipating the WCW show being the longest show we've ever recorded, because we've got so much to go through. We've got the Luger thing, we've got Vader, we've got Austin leaving, we've got the first Nitro, all the other Nitros, and Full Brawl. I don't want to make a prediction how long that is, but that may well have topped in over 2.5 hours. Volume 3 is ECW. We've got the arrival of Steve Austin, I think, on the end of that one as well. And Volume 4 is UFC. So I'll be very interested to see what people think about that. That is out of 20 years ago mode, largely because Chris just started talking out of 20 years ago mode and we just went, fuck it, we'll run with it. But it also made a lot more sense just to do it like that anyway. So very interested to hear your thoughts on our UFC show, but you can find me on Twitter at Bamber. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Wrestling20YRS. Facebook.com/Wrestling20YRS for, Facebook. Wrestling20YRS.com for all your blogs, all your back episodes. iTunes links on there, RSS feeds on there, email, newsletter link is on there, all of that bang. And that'll be about it. So yeah, you've got plenty of listening to do, but I've been Bob Bamber. This has been the September 1995 edition of the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast. And until next time, goodbye.